Hello all my pummeling people. Welcome back to the channel. It's me, Only Run Very Noob, bringing you Bravo gameplay. First off, I would just like to say, get the hell out of here, Icelander. We do not have to deal with that shit anymore. If you see my sideboard over here, there's no more Icelander. I deleted that off of the map. It's gone for good. We don't have to deal with that bad matchup anymore. Now we might have to deal with Kano, but I mean, Kano's not real. He can't hurt you. Anyways, today the game I'm playing is against Azalea, ace in the hole. I do believe that this hero should get an uptick with Icelander being gone. Because Icelander's gone, we're probably going to see a lot more Ninja than we're used to seeing. I feel like Katsu or Fi is like the best deck in the format now. Regardless of which deck is better, I think Ninja as a class is just going to be very, very, very strong right now. Not that there's any major events for you to have to worry about. No callings. Maybe there's a couple battle hardens like around the world, but at least nothing close to me. But if you're anything like me, you want to win all the time, even if you're just playing pickup games on Talishar, even if you're just at your weekly armory. You want to be preparing, and you want to be preparing well, to keep your mind sharp and to just get a deeper understanding of this very complicated game for when the next competitive season does roll around. Of course, we'll probably have a lot to worry about when that happens because it'll happen after heavy hitters. And there's a Guardian in that set, so I definitely expect at least some decisions to make regarding some of the cards in that set. I couldn't imagine they would give us an entire draftable set with the class we play, and there would just be no cards we even want to consider. Like, even if they're not strict upgrades, I imagine there'll be a bunch of side grades. Bravo has always had about 6 to 9 flex blues, and I'm sure that those will, at the very least, be slots that we can look to change once we get a whole bunch of new cards. But yeah, like I was saying, I do believe Ninja is going to be the best deck. And if people want to beat Ninja, I think they kind of have to play Azalea. It's kind of escaping me now. I don't know if there's any other deck you could pick up and play to specifically target Ninjas besides Azalea. Some might say Bravo, but I think Bravo into Ninja is actually a very close matchup. Bravo just has a very even matchup spread. Like, he's not winning any matchups hard, and he's not really losing many matchups hard except for Kano. And that's kind of why I love the deck. I get to just play and be in a lot of games and not like cringe when my opponent flips over their hero. So let's just get into the game. This is sort of a new build I'm testing. Of course, with Icelander gone, I'm testing some different stuff. I've cut Sigil from the list entirely. I know Sigil can still be pretty good in some matchups. Some might even say Azalea. And it's definitely very good in Azuri. It's like the only card you can put in your arsenal that is strong against Arsenal Disruption and protects you from Codex. So it definitely plays a very unique and strong role against Azuri. I'm just not too sure we need it to beat Azuri. I feel like that matchup's really close too. But anyways, I'm not playing Sigil. I cut it because I only really liked it for Icelander. And I was on AB2, and now I'm on AB1. So we got 4 slots. Those 4 slots became red unmovable, 2 more red unmovable, and 2 Crush the Weak, which is sided out in this matchup. But with more Ninja, I kind of wanted Crush the Weak. It's not the most insane card against Ninja. Of course, they can just block it with like a Sync Blow or a Flick Flack and stop the effect. But it is another attack that's sort of easy to pummel, and it is another attack that forces them to do something. If all of our reds just start demanding Sync Blows, they're going to run out of Sync Blows before we run out of cards that demand them, right? against Azalea, I play 63 cards. I play all 39 blues. And I do include my debilitates, my red debilitates. Where are they? Here they are. Little worse than Chokeslam in this matchup, but still fine. Like, I think it's still a good attack. 10 value is 10 value. If you play it off a Surge and they get crushed, 2 card 10 is just actually quite insane. I'm not sure too many decks can do that, like, at all. Maybe, like, Rhinar, if they have, like, Tunic, they can play, like, a Blood Rush Bellow or whatever it's called, and get that sort of value. But we have a really easy way to do it with just making a Surge. So yeah, I play 63. You could play 60 and just maybe cut like the red debilitate, but I like it. We lose the die roll. We're going second. This is actually a pretty decent hand because if they dominate an arrow, we can red unmovable it. It might still hit and leak some damage, but it's not going to leak nearly as much as if we could only block 3. And if they don't play an arrow, we get to Imposing Visage, or like if they don't attack us, we can play an Imposing Visage, look for a blue, hammer for 6, and arsenal the unmovable, which isn't the greatest use of tempo, but it's at least something we can do, and having red unmovable and arsenal is very good. Our opponent kind of takes a weird line here. They load an arrow, they blind flip with Azalea into a Seek and Destroy, and they play it and just automatically use their bullseye bracers. Not sure that's great from them because this arrow is not going to be dominated presumably, and what are they really gonna, they're gonna use their equipment to just like not do any damage to us. Doesn't seem great. They attack us for 8. It's a little scary because if we just block 9 and they have Rain Razors, we're going to end up taking like 7 damage this turn, because if they Rain Razors to get the reload and have a 0 for 4 arrow in their hand, we're just going to take like 7 damage at the minimum, and we're not going to be able to arsenal our unmovable next turn. But I think in this spot you just make them have the Rain Razors. They're playing like 70 cards. The odds that they have Rain Razors is very low. And there's nothing else we can really do without giving them armor back, and I don't like doing that. Like, we could block 6 plus armor, and then if they Rain Razors, we could just, like, play our unmovable. Not the most efficient, but of course we get to draw 4 cards back up, so it wouldn't be the worst, but it's really losing the armor that I don't want to do here. So I just block 9 and sort of clench and hope for the best here, because Rain Razors would be quite punishing. But sometimes you just kind of got to make them have it. Especially in the early game, you can sort of afford to give up a lot of value and try to make it up later. I wouldn't recommend just giving away value for nothing, but making them have it works enough for the time that when they do have the Rain Razors, you're probably okay just like getting blown out there instead of playing around Rain Razors every time, right? We draw 2 blues and a Sink Below. Not very good. We're just going to make a Surge and hammer for 6. I thought a little bit about pitching the Sink Below, just kind of using like Bravo ability, I guess, and then would I even be able to do that? Maybe not. But I end up just keeping it in case he has a 5 arrow that gets double pumped up to 11. We can red unmovable and then Sink Below it for 11 or 12, but you know, we get to cover up the full 11. It looks like we're only going to be attacked for 8 from red in the ledger here because they don't have Tunic counter up. They got a pitch. It wasn't a pump anyway. And it's not dominated, so I feel like with this hand again, we can't really be aggressive. Like if we had 2 blues, or if we had like 3 blues and a Crippling Crush, I would probably just like snap off the unmovable to block 8 here and then throw the Crippling Crush. But since we don't have anything to do, I'm just going to preserve the unmovable and use Fate Foreseen and Sink Below. There's even a chance that the Fate Foreseen sees like a red debilitate on top that we can sink into. But it doesn't have dominate, so we're going to save our reaction and arsenal. trying to make it so we can stop their big dominated threats when they come in. I see a Starstruck on top, and I am going to keep it on top, only because I'm going to be able to keep a Surge, and maybe next turn they only throw like 8. We can play the red unmovable and then throw this Starstruck. If I couldn't make a Surge this turn, I don't think I would keep Starstruck on top at all. Just because holding on to 4 cards is probably pretty tough when we're not really threatening them too much with just a hammer for 6. They take all the damage, which means they're probably going to try to pop off this turn. We have a Surge, a Starstruck, and a Spinal Crush in hand, which is sort of one of my favorite hand compositions. If they don't dominate something, we could block 6, making a second Surge and throwing Spinal off of the remaining blue. But we sort of got to see what they're going to do before we can really commit to how we want to block. But when I first see my hand, you know, like my brain starts moving and I start thinking about like how I would like to block. Like I would like to just block 6, not take a very devastating on hit, and then throw Spinal Crush off 2 cards. Of course, preserving the red unmovable in Arsenal. Because if we use the red unmovable, we can't block with 2 cards and still throw our Spinal Crush, right? Because we have to use one of our cards to use the unmovable. They activate Azalea into a Codex. Not 100% sure. Maybe that's the only arrow they have and they just absolutely need it to not pass the turn. Unfortunately, this arrow is going to be for a lot of damage, and the on hits are devastating enough that we kind of want to stop it. I guess it is just damage and also giving them an arsenal with the Ponder token. So maybe we could just block 6 and do the double Surge, 1 blue Spinal Crush play. But if I block 6, I take 5. I take up to 7 because of the Blood Rot. And then if the card in their arsenal is worth 3, I actually end up losing out on like 10 value. And that's just like a ton of value to lose out on when we don't really have to lose out on any value. Also, like a card being worth 3 value might be like kind of lowballing it here, because them having an arsenal allows them to activate their Skullbone Crosswrap. It allows them to maybe get an arrow with Go Again, like Bolt and Shot, and shoot 2 arrows in a turn. So the Ponder is actually worth quite a bit for them. Like 3 is probably like a serious lowball. 3 is probably the least it could be, right? Like a pump for +3 that doesn't do anything else, which I don't think they play too many of. Maybe like a Read the Glide Path would be the closest thing. So I think I do want to block this 11. I could block 9 from hand and then like an equipment. Preserving the unmovable, sending hammer for 3 because of the frailty. We could also just use the unmovable plus a card, would be 8, 9, 10, 11. That way we preserve armor. And then we can hammer for 3 and then arsenal either a Spinal Crush or a Starstruck. I'd probably lean towards the Spinal Crush because we won't be able to make a Surge, and Starstruck is a lot harder to play without a Surge, where Spinal Crush, you only need 2 blues to play a Spinal Crush with or without a Surge. So I think I like just using the unmovable here. It's a little unfortunate that we have to use it on a non-dominated attack, but also like we're up 6 life and we're going to send 3 damage with a hammer. If they just take it, we're going to be up 9 life with a pretty good threat in Arsenal. As you can see here, I put the 3 cards in front, but I do undo because I'm like, I think I want to preserve armor. Armor is really good for later on if we want to flip the tempo without giving up cards. I don't think this would be a terrible use of armor, right? Because the value from stopping a Blood Rot plus a Ponder is just like a ton. So it wouldn't be like the worst use of armor, but I think I want to preserve armor if I can. I pitched the blue unmovable instead of the Cranial Crush. Just in case the game goes long, I probably want to draw unmovable before I draw the Cranial Crush. It's fairly marginal, but In a deck like Guardian, you want to think about how you're pitching. I'm just fidgeting with my mouse over there, but we're just sending the 3 and we're going to Arsenal the Spinal Crush. We don't have protection from Dominate this turn, and they are going to get Dominate because they have knocked the Death Whistle. If you're not used to Azalea or their cards, Knock the Death Whistle puts a card on top of their library, and then they can activate Azalea to give that arrow Dominate and put it in their arsenal. It also conveniently has Reload, which lets them put a card in arsenal to pay into the Azalea flip. They keep looking for red in the ledger. That's what they got with Codex, and that's what they got with Knock the Death Whistle, but I actually don't think that's that good against us. Like, it's just not... Like, we're fine doing one action, right? Like, Spinal Crush, Crippling Crush, Starstruck, those are all one action and it's fine. Like, ooh, we didn't get to make a Surge or dominate it, right? We got hit by Seek and Destroy, not Inertia token. So I am going to overpitch the CNC just so I don't have to discard it. And of course playing the Spinal Crush because we're just going to lose it to Seek and Destroy if we don't play it. It's our best attack. They don't even have an arsenal for our Command and Conquer, so there's no reason to do anything but the play we did. Fairly easy turn here. They block with Purge Grapplers and a Tar Pit Trap, which doesn't stop the Crush effect, so I'm not too sure why they gave us Boots here. Maybe they were thinking in their head, oh, I have Boots plus Defense Reaction, that stops Spinal. But that only stops Spinal if the Defense Reaction is worth 4 points. Luckily, they did have an attack that didn't require going in the arsenal because their Death Dealer wouldn't have had Go again, so that would have been kind of nice for us. This 4 damage, though, I'm fine just taking this. We have 3 blues and a Starstruck. Dominated Starstruck is like, I want to say 9 times out of 10, but it's probably more like, yeah, it's probably like 9 times out of 10 if they play Sink Below. 9 times out of 10 is just going to steal the turn, deal 8 damage, and we just get like a free turn cycle here. I suppose they can like activate Cross Wrap to get a little opt. I was gonna say value, but opt doesn't have a ton of value. It's at least not realized value. It's just like potential value. This hand isn't terrible. It's not exactly what we want after we steal a turn cycle, but at least it's not just like 4 blues. We get to throw the Debilitate off of the Fate Foreseen and the Unmovable, and then we get to Arsenal our Red Unmovable. Red Unmovable is quite mean against Azalea. If they're not well practiced on how to beat Red Unmovable or Heavy Defense Reaction Bravo, it's going to be very hard for them to win. If they're not teched with like Release the Tensions, if they're not actively looking to trigger like their Remorseless Arrow, which we can't play Defense Reactions from Arsenal with it. If he keeps searching up red in the ledgers and not Remorselesses, then it's going to be pretty good for us. They just take the damage. The life totals are getting quite lopsided, and the Crush effect, while not being as good as Chokeslam, is certainly something. 2 points can help you block a breakpoint. Most of the times they'll probably have arrows for, like an arrow for 10 would be like a 0 for 4 plus 2 pumps for 3, which would lower to 8, which would get cleaned up by our Unmovable and Arsenal, which would be pretty good. They knocked the Death Whistle for red Searing Shot. Not totally sure why you would do that. They even have Tunic up, so they could play like a 1-cost arrow. And if they wanted to get a 0-cost arrow, I feel like Endless Arrow might be a little better, just because if it hits, they get to have an arrow in Arsenal. But they do end up going triple pump. Plus 9 on 4 is 13, minus 2 is 11. But we can do our same play here. We have a red Unmovable in Arsenal, and funnily enough, we have 2 blues, a Starstruck, and a Spinal Crush, which is like exactly like our turn cycle the other turn where we blocked, Had to block an arrow for 11. So we can just unmovable for 8, block for 3, save a blue to hammer for 4, and arsenal the Spinal Crush. I'm going to pitch the Cranial Crush into the unmovable so that I get to pitch Cranial Crush, then Rouse, and then I can put another attack under Rouse, just in case, you know. I like to pitch deck my Rouses so they work. Even if most of the time you are probably not Rouse the Ancienting your Azalea opponent. It's sort of like a why not set it up so that just in case you have tempo in whatever, like 10 turns, you can play it. Our opponent blocks for 3 with a Remorseless. I guess showing that they don't value this card as much as they probably should. Keeps playing Rain Razors when it's not his turn. I'm sure he wants to do that on his turn and then play like a Codex or use Tunic for Death Dealer or something. So yeah, Rain Razors, Codex. So them not getting the Endless Arrow off their Knock the Death Whistle is actually like costing them a ton here, because if they got to Rain Razors Endless Arrow me, I guess the Endless Arrow wouldn't have go again, so it doesn't really matter. But I was thinking they could like shoot the Endless Arrow, get it back, and then like use Tunic to load Death Dealer, but yeah, they can't do that. He just gets red in the ledger. I think Remorseless is probably a little better, because if we have a defense reaction in Arsenal, we can't use it. But they get red in the ledger. It doesn't have Dominate because they Codexed it back. They didn't like Azalea flip it. I definitely just want to throw this Spinal. And I think I'm just going to block 6. I think I'm going to take the 1 and make it so that makes it so I can't make a Surge in Spinal, but I can still just throw the Spinal, and there's no on hit here that's super relevant, like damage wise, where we would like end up blocking with armor just to like, sometimes you block breakpoints with armor just because it's like pretty good if you can use a Crater Fist to stop like a Blood Rot token or something. Like, yeah, it has an on hit. The on hit is we can't make a Surge this turn, but not sure that that's a reason to use armor. Again, they block with Remorseless, although we're not going to have a defense reaction on Arsenal this turn, so maybe that was like a better, or like a more reasonable block with Remorseless there. They Azalea flip into a Searing Shot. They lace with Frailty and then shoot us with this. So it has Dominate, so we can only block with 1 card. We could potentially block with like 4 armor if we wanted to, but we're really just stopping like a Frailty plus an additional damage, which are, I think, the less impactful on hits that their deck could like produce. Like if I'm trying to stop on hits and I'm using my armor conservatively to stop the on hits I care about, like these are certainly not the on hits I really care about. So knowing that, there's a few things we could do here. We could just not block. That doesn't seem that good. If we don't block, we could send it Debilitate. We'll take 8. The Frailty won't do anything. We could send it Debilitate and then Arsenal one of our reds. If we block with Debilitate, we make a Surge and Hammer, which is going to be worth 5 because of the Frailty. So that's like 3 less value than the Debilitate, plus the Debilitate has an on hit. But I think we have to think even further than that. I think we have to think about what card we were going to want in our arsenal. And it's actually kind of a tough choice here, right? We could arsenal a Crippling Crush, pitching the Unmovable and the Visage for Hammer or Debilitate. Or we could arsenal the red Unmovable, which has been very good for us this game. It's very good against Azalea. But at our life totals, I think arsenaling Crippling Crush is better, especially If we take the line of blocking with Debilitate and making a Surge, because Crippling Crush we can throw off 2 blues with Surge. We haven't drawn a Crippling Crush yet, and it's turn 9. So there's even like a high likelihood that we Crippling Crush into another Crippling Crush, which would probably just put this game on ice. So I really think I'm just going to block with Debilitate and then make a Surge and hammer for 6, pitching the Unmovable in the Visage. I'm not sure if this is unintuitive. I think there was definitely a time where I would have arsenaled the Unmovable just to have like as much safety as possible. But I think at these life totals, us having a ton of armor to be able to like use to hold our, or to still be able to throw our Crippling Crush, and that arsenaling the Crippling Crush just has way more upside. How about you guys comment down below what you would do in this turn? It's actually kind of interesting, and I feel like arsenaling the Crippling Crush might be less popular than arsenaling the Unmovable, just because it's like having a defense reaction in Arsenal against Azalea just makes you feel really safe. Like, yeah, you don't have a Crippling Crush, but like you can just keep outvaluing the Azalea and having protection against like whatever they might do. So yeah, comment down below what you might do in this spot. Even if you would like, and if you would arsenal the Crippling Crush, do you even block with Debilitate, or do you just, or if you'd arsenal the Unmovable, would you even block with Debilitate, or would you just like throw Debilitate and then arsenal Unmovable? But yeah, I end up taking the Arsenal Crippling Crush line, blocking 3 damage with the Debilitate. Because holding on to it wouldn't be that good, because then arsenaling a Crippling Crush without a Surge is just sort of... you have to pay 3 life again down the road. So you'd pay 3 life by not blocking this turn, and then pay 3 life again by not blocking with the extra card you would need to just throw the Crippling Crush. And their life total is getting low enough that like even hammer for 5 is something they might be considering like blocking. But I guess they don't. They just go down to 9. And we're going to arsenal our Crippling Crush. And immediately sort of get a hand that's annoying. We can't play our Crippling Crush because we don't have 2 blues. We could sink below our Fate Foreseen away, hoping to get a blue. And then we could Crippling Crush and arsenal Crippling Crush. Here's that follow-up Crippling Crush that I was thinking we might get soon. But we could also maybe be a little more conservative and Fate Foreseen this first attack, knowing there's going to be a follow-up attack, seeing if there is a blue on top, and if there's not, we can look again, and then sink blowing our Crippling Crush, looking for a blue in the top 2 cards instead of just the top 1. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Just be a little bit more conservative here. And we see kind of an interesting one. Red Debilitate. So we could throw this Red Debilitate just off a blue in the Surge. At their life totals, they're probably going to want to start blocking our attacks at some point, right? If they end up blocking this Debilitate with 2 cards, that might buy us the room to throw the Crippling Crush from Arsenal even without a Surge. So I do think I'm going to leave this Debilitate on top instead of looking for a blue. And we're still going to sink below the Crippling Crush, drawing the Debilitate and throwing it off of our Surge and our blue. They just throw Infecting. And we could use our armor to block like 3 here. Because if we just sink below and take 1, then we take an extra 2 from Blood Rot. So it's like we take 3. Or we could block with armor and not take that 3. I actually think that not blocking with armor is better, because there's going to be on-hit effects that are worth more than +1, right? Because this already blocks 2, although it's only going to stop 1 damage defending here because it's only 5 power. But it does block 2, so we're only getting +1 additional value, which is kind of like blocking a Searing Arrow. So I think it might be a mistake here to block with the Crater Fist. I think it'd be better to just save it, take the 3 damage, go to 21 at the end of our next turn, and just have more armor to pivot with this Crippling Crush if we need it. But we end up destroying this Debilitate. I don't think the decision is like game altering. I think this game is definitely firmly in our hands, whether or not we block with Crater Fist. But like I've said before, and like I will continue to say, the goal is not to win games of Flesh and Blood. The goal is to make good plays, make solid plays that we want to repeat forever because they're so good and so much better than the alternatives we have. And if we just keep doing that and keep building our library of good plays and playing to them, we're just going to win games as a byproduct of that. It looks like they play a Knock the Death Whistle and they get a Sleep Dart. Quite interesting. Maybe they didn't have another red in the ledger and they're thinking Sleep Dart is basically red in the ledger here. But this Sleep Dart's only going to be for 3 because of the Debilitate crush effect, which they took. And then it's only going to be for 6 now with this Seek and Destroy. But we are just going to use our armor and one of our 3 blocks and keep our Crippling Crush in 3 blues and dominate a Crippling Crush and hope it's good enough. Again, just being mindful of pitching. Pitch the Tear Sunder first, and then the Debilitate, and then the Rouse, so that if we draw an attack that can turn on Rouse, we can pitch that red underneath. But I don't think it ends up mattering. We just take the win here. This build of Bravo is probably quite strong into Azalea. 3 red unmovables is quite a lot of hate for this matchup. Red unmovable really only for Azalea in the mirror. I used to bring it in some other matchups, but I don't think I do at all. It's probably a sideboard slot that's not as efficient as a card that might come in more matchups. But it is a very good card for those 2 matchups. It is sort of game winning, like in the mirror and against Azalea. Especially if the Azalea isn't really playing to Remorseless, isn't playing to release the tension, and isn't really trying to make my defense reactions awkward. If they're just trying to like run into my defense reactions, red unmovable is just going to be so very good. Against, you could block like 11 dominate fairly trivially, like with no armor. Like you saw me do at least once this game. I think another red unmovable I played this game was on an undominated arrow, but still, like if it had dominate, we would have blocked all the same. So yeah, I definitely wanted to bring you guys some more CC gameplay now that the meta has changed. I'm not sure if it's changed for the better. Being a Bravo player, you probably don't like Iyslander. You're probably happy to see her go. But part of me thinks that Iyslander was a deck that sort of held the meta together. Because the new meta, I think, is just going to be Ninja running absolutely wild. Azalea is the only deck that you can really pick to counter Azalea, or to counter Ninja. And I'm not sure that a rock, paper, scissors format of Ninja beating everything, Azalea beating Ninja, and then Bravo beating Azalea is super healthy. I'm really hoping that some events show us that I'm not really correct in my meta analysis here. Maybe there can be some dark horses. Like, we all know Dromai is a very good, strong deck. Dromai is good into Azalea, I would say. And I would even say that it's like a fine choice if you're expecting a lot of Bravo. A long time ago, Dromai just really lost to Bravo hard. I'm not sure if it was because Dromai pilots hadn't figured out the matchup yet, because Bravo was sort of fringe, that they just didn't practice it a bunch, or if the new cards they got just really broke that match open for them. But it feels like a 50-50 that might even be, dare I say, slightly Dromai favored, like a 52-48 in Dromai's favor. Of course, Bravo can do his Bravo thing, and into a Dromai that isn't well practiced, a Bravo should have a sort of an easy route to victory, just punishing the fact that the Dromai is not setting up stuff and going over the top. Maybe playing too many dragons still instead of playing like attacks that don't get popped. But do you really want to play Dromai? Do you really want to bring Dromai to an important event if Fi is just like the best deck? It seems a little what's the word for it? Insane? Because I I hear a lot of Dromai players say that they can sort of beat Fi now, but I think all things being equal, a Fi is going to just be like spanking a Dromai. It's not like 80-20 like it used to be. Maybe it's like 65-35 Fi favored, but Fi has got to be incredibly, incredibly favored in Dromai. Um, so yeah, Dromai is the only other deck I could think of. I guess all three mechs see a little bit of play. Um, Not sure how they fit into that meta triangle of Ninja, Guardian, Azalea. I feel like Mech sort of beats Bravo. It loses to Fi, and maybe is good into Azalea too, depending on the build. Maybe Dash IO beats Fi, but the other two mechs certainly don't, or the other two relevant mechs. I don't think you see a lot of tech low. I think you see OG Dash, Max, and Dash IO. So it should be interesting. And I guess I did misspeak a little bit earlier. There is a very big event this weekend, and I think it's called like the Realm Rumble or something. Like it's like a 30K event. It's like a going to be a very big prize pool. It's going to be like a big event that people are testing for and really want to win. Trying hard and really getting sweaty to try to win that. And that should be very interesting to see how this meta develops. Kind of just for fun, because it's not like there's another event after that that you could use this meta information for, but just have some fun. But I definitely wanted to bring this game because we're favored into Azalea, but this is definitely a matchup that you're going to see moving forward, at least I think. I guess I said the same thing last meta after Lexi went and it didn't really come to fruition. But I think with so much Ninja running around that people are going to be sleeving up Red in the Ledger. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. If you made it this far, thank you so much for just listening to me sort of rant and rumble about this game I love, about this hero I love, and about the hero's place in the meta. So, yeah. Until next time, have a good time swinging that hammer, and may your crippling crushes make your opponent discard 2 cards.